Hey, welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel, and today I want to look at 19 foods and see, do they last forever? And forever is a long time, and I've seen a lot of variations on this, but I wanted to jump in because not everything actually lasts forever, right? I want to talk about long shelf life, super long shelf life, but what does forever really mean, right? And does it matter? Does food need to actually last forever, right? So I want to kind of jump into it. I've got a few different categories. I have things that actually probably would last forever. We've got the 30-year plus range. I did 10 to 20 years. And then stuff that people might say lasts forever that's probably more like 2 to 3 years. So try to gather a lot of information, do as much research as possible, and bring that to you. And just a note, legal note, health note, personal safety note, anytime you go past the best by date with any food, even if I'm about to sell you it lasts forever, you got to use your best judgment. Does it look right? Does it smell right? Does it have mold on it? Does it have weird growth on it? For canned goods, is the can destroyed, right? You have to use your best judgment. I'm not advising to go past the best by date per se, just giving you information about potential long-term shelf life based on some foods and ingredients, right? You always have to use your best judgment. So your health is important, and it's on you, right, to determine ultimately if you do go past the best by date, is that the right choice? So having said that, gotten that out of the way, I don't want to have to repeat it on every item. Putting that disclaimer out there, right? You got to use your best judgment. But let's start with forever, right? Because that's one of those terms that always bugs me. Like, really, forever? Does it really last forever? Forever's a long time. Well, salt, sea salt is pretty close to forever, and I'll tell you why. I looked it up. Salt, our oceans, the oceans on this planet, which is where sea salt comes from, are 3.8 billion years old. So any of the salt you get, which comes from the sea, could potentially be 3.8 billion years old. I'll take 3.8 billion years old as forever, right? If stored properly, or at least somewhat okayly, salt's going to last a long time, right? We've been harvesting salt from the ocean. It looks like about 8,000 years now, recorded history, maybe longer. So if you want to pick one thing that's for sure going to outlast us all, and that is salt, right? Now, once again, we're saying foods, and I cringe on the idea of salt being a food. It's certainly a mineral. It is something you need. It's hardly a meal, and it has 0 calories. So once again, it's one of those point of clarifications is I acknowledge salt is not food. It is a mineral. It is important, right? You do need it. So we're going to roll with it anyway and say if you want something that lasts forever, get your sea salt out. You can leave it on the counter for a couple million years if you want. You don't have to refrigerate it. So next item I want to jump in that forever category is sugar. Now, sugar has not necessarily been around for 3.8 billion years, right? We're not scraping it off the bottom of dead seas. Comes from the sugar cane plant, and it was really first sort of cultivated, harvested. We have evidence going back about 8,000 years that we realized cane makes sugar is good. Probably a couple thousand years that we've been crystallizing it. There seem to be mixed reports on that. Now, sugar itself is antimicrobial, and if you look at Utah University, they've got a great department when it comes to these kind of things, and they're saying indefinite because it is antimicrobial. Once again, it's one of those things you still have to store it properly, right? You don't want to get water. You don't want to get it full of bugs. You don't want to leave it out in the sun. So there are some requirements on any of these to store it properly, but there's reasonable research for people saying that, yeah, sugar lasts forever. It's indefinite. It is its own preservative. It preserves itself. It's resistant to microbes. So sugar, we can say, I'll give it a forever category. The next one we're getting closer to forever is honey. This is Jake's Place Honey, Texas. Check him out. He has a YouTube channel. They have found 3,000-year-old honey that's well preserved. I don't know if we have honey going back further than that, but honey, once again, is one of those things. They say forever, indefinite, certainly thousands of years, right? Not quite the billions of years of salt, but we'll give it thousands of years and we'll call that indefinite. But honey is one of those things, will last a long time, and it has some actual medicinal properties as well, so it is good to have around. Next one you see floating around in the corner here, whiskey. Whiskey hasn't been around forever. The oldest whiskey that you can probably get if you had an unlimited budget is about 250 years old. 100-year-old bottles of whiskey apparently sell for about $17,000, and I just got that on Google. Wouldn't know where to buy a 100-year-old bottle of whiskey, but whiskey and some of the other hard alcohols are one of those things that doesn't actually expire. It's okay. It's okay over time. Wine, on the other hand, and I've made a lot of wine in my life, wine does expire. So some of those older wines are more collectible items. Whiskey does not. So having gotten that out of the way, those are the truly indefinite forever foods, right? It's the first 4 items. I want to jump into now what I would call the 30-year plus. And certainly when you say plus, 30-year plus, hey, you gave me a plus, so that means longer than 30 years. Is that forever? We'll say it's a long time, right? Maybe it's not billions of years like the salt, but it's still a long time. So let me kind of jump into these here. Rice. Rice is one of those 30-year plus if stored properly. Obviously cool, dry place. Think Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers. Studies show that rice, as long as it's dry and somewhat taken care of, can last a very long time, maybe 30 years. It's one of those items you can put up, store it properly, and come back later on, and it's still going to be rice, right? So we'll put this in. Do you want to call 30 years forever? It certainly could be forever for a lot of people. Long time, right? Rice is one of those things. You buy it, you forget about it, you put it away, and it's still going to be there 20, 30 years. For me, that would put me about 75, and I will have long forgotten about the rice I'm buying right now. Next one is beans. Once again, there's studies that say beans can last 30 years if stored properly, maybe more. From some of the things I've read, though, if you take 30-year-old beans, even if they're stored perfectly, and you soak them, they may never actually soften up. So they could stay hard and crunchy. At that point, they're kind of dry little rocks, but you probably still have some nutritional value. So in that sense, maybe 30 years, maybe longer, but it's probably not going to be the beans you're expecting it to be. Another item that will last a very long time, wheat berries. So you get the little wheat berries. I know they call them berries. They look like little seeds to me, but these are wheat berries. Once again, this is a 30-year kind of plus item. People say could last a long time. I mean, it has a best by date of 2 years. A lot of these do. They're going to have a best by date of 1 year, 2 years, and I'm saying 30 years, and obviously you got to use your best judgment. If stored properly, it can last a long time, and you'll still be able to grind it up and make flour, right? So wheat berries is always a good option if you want to be able to make bread. Next one I want to jump in here is freeze-dried. Now, freeze-dried, you pretty much get 25, 30 years on the package. Certainly a lot more expensive than something like rice or beans. The advantage is there's a pretty good chance 20, 30 years the lasagna with meat sauce will still taste pretty good. When you pull it out, it's been freeze-dried, you take it out, add the water, and it might be a decent meal. As I said, the beans, you take out the beans, add the water, and they may never actually soften up after 20, 30 years of sitting. So certainly the freeze-dried has that advantage. You could say dominates that 30-year category. Another one, so this one is one of those pepper. This is a peppercorn peppercorn medley, got to say that properly. So they say uncracked whole peppercorns could last a lifetime. It's one of those 2 to 3 years to a lifetime. Once again, depends how it's stored. It says store in cool, dry place. You'll see that over and over. You don't want them getting wet. You don't want to get them moldy, but allegedly uncracked pepper is one of those things. We'll say lifetime, 30 years, 30 year plus, right? Next item I want to hit is instant coffee. A lot of research out there says instant coffee, once again, unlimited shelf life, lasts a very long time. It's got a couple years on the package, but if you look at the research, there's a lot of studies saying instant coffee can last forever. So it's something certainly good to have in your long-term pantry. I've read some things that say even ground coffee technically can probably last forever. You're going to end up with some flavor issues if it doesn't go bad on you, but certainly instant coffee has more support, more research around saying that, yep, it can last forever. And the next one, of course, is cornstarch. Cornstarch thickens sauces, gravies, great for baking. People say cornstarch just because of the ingredients, as long as it stays dry, cool, dry place. Once again, has the potential to last forever. Is it 30 years? And obviously it's got 3 years on the container. But there's evidence out there to support that it's one of those items that could go 30-year plus if stored properly. So you got your cornstarch there. Another one, very popular, apple cider vinegar. Because it is vinegar, the fermentation process leaves it highly acidic, which is what vinegar is, will last a very long time. Now, you could say 30 years plus. I see people saying it won't expire. It has the potential, if we're talking 10 years, 15 years, 20 years out, the quality is going to change. It is going to chemically degrade and change over time. If you want to say 30 years, great. Once again, always use your best judgment. But it's one of those very long time. I don't know if you're really going to get 30 years. It might be a 10, 20. But there's things you can see online that say apple cider vinegar will last forever. Next item, and I'm kind of counting these as one, which are your canned goods, right? We got black beans, and we've got our tasty sardines in soybean oil. So you've got a long Best By date on the sardines, 2028. So that's about a five-year shelf life from when I got it. The beans is 2024, 1 year shelf life on the beans. Now, there was a study, discovery, where they found a 100-year-old can of food. It was just a can of food, 100 years old. They opened it up and it hadn't grown any bad microbes. So they do a pretty good job sealing the can, cooking it in the can to prevent any bad stuff from getting in there and growing on it. So at that point, it's food in a can. Certainly will degrade over time. You wouldn't want to keep it hot. Always cool place, dry place, because you don't want the cans to rust. Now, some things will rust through the can. So we had some can of yams that rusted through itself before it had even expired, before it was past the Best By date. So you have to keep an eye on it. But the general thought is, as long as the can is good shape, right, you can open it up, and as long as it looks good, smells good, it's probably still good. So I don't usually say 100 years on canned goods, but there is evidence out there to suggest that maybe it can last 100 years. I consider that maybe more the 20, 30, maybe even push it into the 10-year category on canned goods. Last item I have here is the pure maple syrup. So 100% pure maple syrup. Once again, it's one of those, it kind of falls into the sugar category because it's such a high level of sugar that they say, it could last years, could last decades. When you're talking about sugars indefinite, and this is a high concentrate of sugar, maybe it pushes in that direction. You got 3 years on the container. If you're planning it, you certainly want to keep it sealed. You wouldn't want water to get into it. You wouldn't want mold to get into it or anything like that. But it is one of those items, because of the sugar, and sugar's indefinite, it's a high sugar content, it'll probably last a very long time, right? Always use your best judgment on any of that stuff. So I want to jump into what I would call the honorable mention, which is the rolled oats. So this, really, you look at it, the instant rolled oats, rolled or instant oats, which is what these are. University of Utah says 25 years if stored properly, so not quite 30 years. Certainly 25 years is a long time to keep a bag of oatmeal. but if stored properly, could last a very long time. Not forever, but quite a while. So I want to kind of jump into some items that I don't really think quite hit that forever, and I know I see some people saying they do. One is the corn syrup. They say corn syrup never goes bad. I've seen stuff say corn syrup can mold. It is super high sugar, right? So I'm not sure that it really goes into that 30-year or forever. Personally, I'd put it more in maybe 10 to 20-year range, right, if stored properly. But I don't think it's really a forever, right? I've seen too many things saying, yes, you can get mold. It can go bad on you. You'd want to keep it sealed. Could be wrong on that, but for me, it's more in that 10-year, 20-year category. Once again, stored properly, sealed. Same thing on molasses. There are things saying molasses can last a very long time. I read in articles where someone even said they tasted 10-year-old molasses and it tasted fine. It is a bit of a high sugar concentrate, right? So I don't know for sure on molasses. I have a hard time pushing it more than, say, 10 to 20 years. It could last a long time. Certainly it's all in how you store it. But I wouldn't put it in that necessarily forever unless you consider 10 to 20 years as forever. So two other items here, I think these are my last two, that I don't think they last quite as long. I've seen some people saying they last forever. Baking soda. Baking soda is one of those that generally comes up on lists of forever. It doesn't expire, right? Right off the bat, baking soda does not expire. So immediately like, well, wait a minute, if it doesn't expire, then it lasts forever. Yes, technically it lasts forever, but it also stops working, right? So the point of baking soda isn't to consume the yummy 0-calorie mix. It's for rising bread, right? For leavening your bread, right? It has an actual function, it has a purpose, and over time its ability to do that degrades, and that could be as short as 2 to 3 years, if not sooner. So in one sense, yes, it lasts forever, but it stops working, and at that point you're just consuming powder, right? It's a little bit of sodium at 0 calories. So it's probably more like a 2 to 3 years. Expiration date on this looks like they give you a couple years. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I mean, it says, right, great for baking, cleaning, and deodorizing. There are other uses for baking soda. So if you got 5-year-old baking soda and you're thinking more about cleaning, deodorizing, brushing your teeth, great. But in terms of its ability to bake, that does go away. So I wouldn't necessarily call that one forever. Soy sauce is another one. I got some mixed stuff on shelf life, and it can mold. And the fresher, more artisanally craft soy sauce does not last nearly as long. We think of it as super high salt, right? And because high salt, you would expect a longer shelf life, but from what I'm reading, even sealed, 2 to 3 years might realistically be more appropriate for soy sauce. If you find something else, if you got something else, let me know, but I wouldn't necessarily put it as a 30-year or forever food, right? So wanted to get that out there. That's my list. Once again, always we appreciate you guys watching. Just wanted to kind of tear through. We've been talking about long shelf life, and want to kind of break it out. Give you the list of where we sit on some of these items from the research I've found, in terms of what to expect, what you can store in your pantry, what's going to give you that longest shelf life. So, as always, thank you for watching, and we appreciate you.